Invisible Illnesses, Stoma and Continence series, brought to you by SecuriCare. Whatever your stoma or continence care needs, SecuriCare puts you first.
Hello and welcome to the final episode in our 4-part Invisible Illnesses mini-series, brought to you by SecuriCare. In this series, we're looking at the meaning of an invisible illness and exploring the journeys of individuals living with a stoma and or urinary incontinence, as we're joined by several friends from SecuriCare, including specialist nurses who look after people living with a stoma and urinary incontinence. To give you a bit of background, SecuriCare is a specialist healthcare provider based locally in High Wycombe, delivering NHS services all over the UK. As well as having a team of specialist stoma care nurses working in hospitals and the community, SecuriCare offers a free home delivery service for prescription stoma and continence care products, as well as prescription medicines through their in-house pharmacy, PharmaCare. Now, invisible illnesses is a term that I'm sure many of us are familiar with, but how many of us have come across the word stoma or urinary incontinence? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today, and in this episode we're joined by Zoe from SecuriCare and Julie from CliniMed, and we're going to have a chat all about urinary incontinence. So whether you are living with urinary incontinence, you know someone or have a loved one who is, or just fancy learning more, keep on listening.
Invisible Illnesses, Stoma and Continence series, brought to you by SecuriCare.
I'm Bob Johnson, and today I'm joined by Zoe Sherritt from the Careline team at SecuriCare and Julie Perry, who's from CliniMed and is a continence nurse advisor. Zoe, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role?
So, I've worked at SecuriCare for 16 years now, and my role is on the care line where I talk to patients that want help or advice, or they've seen adverts in some of the main magazines that carry information about continence or stoma, and respond to those and give them some help with products and some troubleshooting.
And on the phone we have Julie. Tell us a little bit about being a nurse advisor.
So I'm a CliniMed continence nurse advisor. I qualified as a nurse many moons ago, Bob, and I've been practicing now for 32 years. I've previously worked within surgical urology, and I was also a practice nurse, and I specialised in women's health, and I was also a midwife. I've been with CliniMed now for a year and a half, and I've been looking after their patients since then.
Zoe, we are now on the 4th episode of this mini-series. We've been discussing stomas. Just for people who don't know, just tell us a little bit about some of the things that we've already discussed.
So we've been very much talking about the fact that things like stomas and continence are often invisible illnesses that people live with, but many people don't realise it's happening for them, and it's about some of the things that they'll have to overcome and deal with dealing with an invisible illness, and where there is help available for them to get support and help when they are dealing with these invisible illnesses.
Julie, so talking about incontinence, how common a problem is it?
Sadly, it is a common problem, thought to affect millions of people, and also many seem to suffer in silence, sadly.
And what actually is incontinence?
Well, you can be incontinent of urine, faeces, or both. Urinary incontinence is basically the loss of bladder control. It's a common and embarrassing problem. The severity ranges from occasional leaking urine when you cough or sneeze, or to having a sudden, strong urge without warning.
And I would imagine that's quite awkward for people as well, because you're probably quite conscious. I mean, particularly if you think you're going to sneeze, that must actually mentally affect you as well.
Absolutely, yeah. As well as the stigma that comes along with it, there is obviously the mental health side of things as well.
What causes urinary incontinence?
So urinary incontinence is usually caused by problems with the muscles and the nerves that help the bladder to hold and pass urine. There can be many reasons why the muscles and the nerves are affected, from health conditions such as obesity through to MS or to just being heavily pregnant. So there are many causes.
And what age groups does it tend to affect? I think commonly we probably think that actually it affects older people, but is that true?
Well, commonly the risk of incontinence does increase with age, but growing older does not necessarily mean that you will develop continence problems. That is also the case with if you go through pregnancy or the menopause. It doesn't automatically mean you will develop urinary incontinence. If you have a healthy lifestyle, you can reduce the risks with diet, exercise, avoid smoking and keep your weight down. I always say it's really important to seek advice from your GP or your practice nurse if you find you're having a problem.
And does it tend to affect men more than women?
Really interesting question there. Statistically, more women are affected by this, but it really does depend on the individual's health and on where they're at with that. But there are events in a person's life that may increase the risk of developing urinary incontinence. Like we said before, pregnancy, the menopause, and in men as they get older, there is obviously issues around prostate problems, particularly in later life.
What should somebody do then if they think that they might be incontinent?
The first instance is you've got to speak to your GP or your practice nurse, who will probably ask lots of questions regarding the problem and the symptoms that you're experiencing. I always recommend keeping a diary of the frequency and the issues that you're having and take that along to your appointment. Look to making some lifestyle changes as well. If you feel you need to lose weight, lose some weight, avoid caffeine, start some pelvic floor exercises. Your GP may request for you to have some tests done, so he might ask for a urine sample. You may also be referred to the continence specialist nurse. The most important thing, though, is to seek help and don't suffer in silence.
Yeah, and a continence diary can really help your GP or your nurse to understand the problems and identify possible causes of your incontinence. You may also be referred, or in some areas you can actually refer yourself to your local continence or bladder and bowel service. It's very important to access support networks and talk to people who have maybe had similar experiences.
And I would imagine when you're filling in that diary, it is very important to be completely honest. It's not a time to be embarrassed or feeling awkward when you're discussing it with your GP.
Absolutely, because otherwise your GP's not going to have a good opportunity to really assess what's going on unless you're very honest about it. And the more honest you are, the more likely you are to get the help that you need.
So although that might be quite difficult for some people, actually it's much better just to be completely upfront first of all, rather than maybe thinking, oh, well, I won't say that today, because probably, whatever it is that you're actually thinking, well, I'm not really very comfortable saying that, eventually you're going to have to say it. So
yeah, that's it. So I think if you write it down in a diary when it's just for you, you can then share that later. It's a good way of capturing that information and maybe also helping yourself to see exactly what's going on. Something you've maybe been suffering in silence for a long time, you see it on paper and maybe that'll help you to see that you need to get that help and support.
And actually it's so much easier writing things down.
And you may forget things. It's easy to forget a little detail that could make a difference to a diagnosis.
Julie, is there a cure for incontinence?
Actually, incontinence is a symptom and not an illness. So it really depends on the cause of your incontinence. Not all incontinence is long-term. So if we think about pregnancy, for example, once you have been investigated and the cause of your incontinence has been diagnosed, there are many treatment options. These range from simple pelvic floor exercises to medication. In some extreme cases, might be offered surgery. The first step, though, is making that appointment with your GP.
Zoe, earlier on, pelvic floor exercises were mentioned, which is something that we hear quite a lot about, actually, but something that I don't really know very much about. What can people do to strengthen their bladder?
If they go online, there's going to be lots of opportunities on YouTube, on the NHS web pages, where they'll give you exercises for strengthening the pelvic floor. And I think that often when you have a baby, I know when I went through my experience of having children, straight away then you're told, right, now you need to exercise your pelvic floor. And actually, probably what we should all be doing is being much more focused on that at a much earlier stage before we have children. And it's important for men and women to keep a good, healthy pelvic floor. And a lot of exercise classes like Pilates and yoga will often talk about that as well. But there's so much available online.
And I'm assuming as well that actually these are quite good exercises to do because you can pretty much do them anywhere at any time.
Absolutely. Sat on the bus,
you're not
sitting having a cup of tea with your friend. Yeah, you can do it. But you should, if you're going to be attempting anything very new in exercise, then obviously do consult with your GP or a health professional first. But they are the sort of things that can be done very simply, very easily, just while you're sitting watching the TV even.
Julie, in what other ways can incontinence be managed?
Well, like Zoe said, you've got your pelvic floors, and those exercises are really key. But it also does depend on the underlying cause. So your GP might start you on some medication, which will help control the bladder a bit better for you. Or there might be some medical devices. There are things such as catheters, indwelling catheters, or ISC catheters, which is intermittent self-catheterization. There's also sheaths, and there's such an array of products out there, but you really will need advice on those. For extreme and severe cases, there are surgical interventions that could be offered, and there's also something such as Botox that might help to pull the bladder up a little bit.
And is it common for people to use a medical device for incontinence?
It really depends on the individual, but yes, it's not uncommon for people to choose to start using a device. You commonly can see incontinence pads in the supermarket now, so there's an array of devices. But again, I would ask for advice from your nurse or from your GP.
And as there is an array of products out there, Zoe, I would imagine, particularly as well, if you're just starting out on this journey, it must be quite difficult to find actually what the right product is for you, and possibly even be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, the good thing is that your nurse initially will give you some different products to try and be able to assess very quickly, because your lifestyle, the situation in which you're going to be using the devices, your anatomy, your dexterity are all going to make a difference to what's right for you. And that's the great thing. There are so many products out there, and your nurse will help you to assess what's going to be right for you and fit with your lifestyle and when you're going to be using these products. And then there's the opportunity to try different manufacturers' makes of those to find the one that really fits for you.
So it's very important to know that actually different products work for different people, because I can imagine, say if you've got a friend who already is incontinent, they might be saying to you, oh wow, this really, really works for me, you've got to try it, and actually it might not work for you at all.
Absolutely. And I talk to people every day who have been sent home with various products that are okay, but they still want to find that one that fits, because maybe they're a busy mum, maybe there's somebody that's out at work, maybe there's somebody that's retired, they like to go out for lots of walks and things. It's finding the product that fits with their lifestyle and very much their anatomy and their dexterity and their situation that they're going to be in. So it's not one size fits all, it's definitely finding the right product for you.
How does SecuriCare help people living with incontinence?
So what we basically do is we provide a free home delivery service. So all of your needs for your prescription can be delivered to your door completely free of charge. We deal with the prescription for stoma and incontinence with your GP. We liaise with your GP to get the prescription sorted, and then your products are delivered to your door. And it's the right products for you. And we try to make sure the service is tailored for you. So some people like to order online, some people like to make a phone call and have a chat with somebody, some people use the text service to tell us when they need an order. There's lots of ways of doing that. It's a friendly service with a large group of people who love talking to people and helping them and making a real difference. So that's what we're all about. And we've also got PharmaCare, which is our in-house pharmacy, and they deliver prescription medicines to SecuriCare customers along with their stoma or continence supplies. And they can also deliver prescription medicines to anybody else in your household that doesn't maybe have a stoma or continence issues but has regular medication. So you can have everything delivered to your door all in one go, nice and discreet, no hassles. We do all of the work for you.
So very convenient actually for the whole household then.
Yes, definitely. We've got a care line as well, which is we're very unbiased on products. So when people ring us for advice on products, we can give them lifestyle information. We talk to such an array of people, from very young to people retired, and we like to make sure that we give them the advice that they need to fit with their lifestyle.
I think people are becoming more knowledgeable about invisible illnesses, but how can we become more mindful of people who are living with incontinence?
It's an invisible illness and it may not be visible to the naked eye. There's been a lot of publicity about this and people not being aware. So I think we've got to be very careful to not make judgment of people and not criticise people, because on the outside they may look absolutely fine and the same as you and I, but you don't know what they're dealing with elsewhere and what's going on. People think people are making things up. They're not. With many of these conditions, the severity of the condition can really fluctuate. It can fluctuate daily, monthly, annually, and people need to be considerate of that. And because of the nature of invisible illnesses, there's a lack of social awareness around some of these conditions, and this can then lead to a stigma. And the best way to overcome this stigma is to educate others about the conditions, and that's why we're here. Be kind to people, don't judge people. people, you just don't know what else they're dealing with that you can't see.
So where can we go to learn more about incontinence?
So you can go to our SecuriCare website. That's got lots of lovely information on there. NHS websites, there's lots of online forums. Social media is brilliant for just Googling information and bringing lots of different social websites up where people have closed groups that will talk to people about these issues and listen to other people's stories. That's really important.
Well, Julie and Zoe, thank you so much for joining me today. I've said this after every episode, but I've learned so much in the last 15 minutes. Thank you very, very much for chatting to us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Invisible Illnesses, Stoma and Continence series, brought to you by SecuriCare. Whatever your stoma or continence care needs, SecuriCare puts you first.
Thank you so much to Zoe and Julie for joining us for the final